One of the reasons I lost this past week and fell to 4-1 is my DST scored -3 points. I'm going to make sure that doesn't happen this week. Let me set you up with some quarterback, tight end, and DST options. S tier QB, you really only have Josh Allen. I have Josh Allen on my own team, and I'm going to be honest with you, even though he's the QB1 in fantasy, averaging 23.5 points per game, I don't know what I was hoping for, but I feel disappointed with that. I'm like, come on, give me another one of these massive blow up 30-point weeks for the love of God, even though, I mean, you can't really complain about him being the QB1 in fantasy, right? Realistically, this matchup against Atlanta is completely fine. It's in the dome. You have an implied team total of 27 points. Clearly, if you have Josh Allen, you start Josh Allen. With Jaden Daniels as our next quarterback, still wearing the knee brace. Looking at the rushing production this past week, it was at 39 rushing yards, so not necessarily back to what we saw at the peak in his rookie season. But this matchup against the Chicago Bears, you currently do have the Commanders projected out as a top 4 offense in the NFL this week, where you will have some rushing upside. Going ahead and looking at Jalen Hurts is giving you a relatively decent floor. He's actually the QB5 in points per game. But realistically, the spread on this game against the New York Giants is pretty large. It's over a touchdown. So I think we can realistically assume that you're going to have a lot of rushing with Saquon Barkley in this game, especially as we know that you actually had the Philadelphia Eagles try to make A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith happy this past week, and it ended up losing them the game. Now, Patrick Mahomes, we have seen a clear trend. If the game is close, if the Chiefs are going to lose, he's going to go out there and he's going to run the ball a ton. In the 3 games the Chiefs have lost so far this season, Mahomes has had, on average, over 60 rushing yards per game and a rushing touchdown every one of those 3 games. And he's scored at least 22 fantasy points for the 5 weeks that you've had so far this year, where he is the QB2. Right now, this matchup against the Detroit Lions projects out as the highest scoring game of the week. So Patrick Mahomes is an auto start if you have him. Now, typically, I'm not going to be this high on Jordan Love, but it's a great matchup against the Cincinnati Bengals, where right now you have an implied team total of about 29.5 points for the Green Bay Packers. So they currently project to be the highest scoring offense in the league. Jordan Love, obviously not going to give you a ton of rushing production. I mean, this year he's averaging about 15.5 rushing yards per game, but that would be a career high for him. So I wouldn't be too surprised if that fell back just slightly. Now, Justin Fields, in the 3 games that he has played fully, is sitting here with 29.5, 27.1, and 25.9 fantasy points. And you can make an argument that Justin Fields would be the QB1 in fantasy football if he never got injured. Now, I will say there is always the floor with Justin Fields where it's an ultimate collapse, where it's a collapse like the beginning of the game against the Dallas Cowboys this past week, but the garbage time never comes. Like, that's in the range of outcomes with Justin Fields, a way that it just simply isn't with Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts is never going to go out there and give you 3 fantasy points in a singular game the way that Justin Fields can. This matchup against the Denver Broncos is not nearly as strong of a matchup as what you had with the Dallas Cowboys last week. Now, still very clearly, Justin Fields looks to be a must-start quarterback based off rushing upside, but I think you maybe just lower expectations a tiny bit. Now, with Baker Mayfield, I am an idiot because I went ahead and I ranked Baker as somebody that you just kind of had to go through and bench this past week. And what did he do? He said, I don't care if I have Mike Evans. I don't care if I have Chris Godwin at 20%. I don't care if I have to travel from Tampa to Seattle. I'm going to drop 26.7 fantasy points. Baker Mayfield's been the QB4 so far this season. He's arguably been the MVP of the NFL, as crazy as that sounds. But realistically, this dude's sitting here with a total of 10 passing touchdowns to 1 interception. The Bucs are winning games just based off what he can do, keeping them in it from the very beginning to the very end. So he's playing phenomenally. He's at home this game. He's playing the Niners. Our next quarterback with Drake May, you have an implied team total about 24.5 points. Obviously, Drake May is going to run the ball some. This past week against the Buffalo Bills, it was an incredibly impressive real performance from Drake May from an NFL perspective. Fantasy-wise, he only scored 12.1 fantasy points. But I do think that you have the insane ceiling in any matchup if he can put together one of those games where he has the passing volume and the rushing production at the same time. Now, let's move over to Daniel Jones. Right now, the Indianapolis Colts project to, I want to say, be the 6th highest scoring offense in the league this week. Now, clearly, you are going to see Indianapolis try to do this by running the ball over and over and over again. And realistically, there's a good shot that they're able to do just that because you're going up against the Cardinals, who potentially have no Kyler Murray at this point. Now, over to our next one. We have Justin Herbert, where he has fallen dramatically in fantasy points since the beginning of the year, where week 1, he had 28. Week 2, he had about 19. But over the past 3 weeks, he's averaging about 13.5 points per game. Now, with that being said, you lose Amari and Hampton, you'll lose Najee Harris. So all of a sudden, I think you can say that you're probably going to see the Los Angeles Chargers go out there and have to throw the ball with aggression because I don't know if they're going to have other options. Looking at Dak Prescott as our next name, Dak in a great matchup against the Carolina Panthers. And honestly, we're probably going to be a little bit too low on Dak Prescott in this spot, where you do have the Dallas Cowboys projected out with an implied team total of 26.5 points. I'm just going to be a little bit concerned given the fact that obviously you have no Lamb and your depth at the position's been thinned out a bit. With Caleb Williams, he's shown you some rushing upside this season, right? At least a lot of it week 1. Over the past 3 weeks, it did trail off just a bit. But you have had that massive spike. Obviously, it came against a very bad Dallas Cowboys DST. The reason I'm a little bit less intrigued with him here is you do have the Commanders pretty heavily favored in this game. Now, typically, Jared Goff is not going to go out there and lead the NFL in passing attempts by any means, but he actually may get forced to throw the ball in this game against the Kansas City Chiefs, which is why if I'm looking at his underdog pick'em right now, I actually really like Jared Goff to go higher than 1.5 passing touchdowns because you do have this projected out to be the highest scoring game of the week, and the Kansas City Chiefs are favored in this game. So I think the Lions are going to have to throw it. And you've actually had Jared Goff with at least 2 passing touchdowns in 3 out of the 5 games he's played so far this year. But if you wanted to go check out any of those picks over on Underdog Fantasy, you can find that link in the description as well as the comment section. We've had more people sign up to Underdog Fantasy over the past 10 days than I've had in pretty much forever with code FLOCK. And the reason being is code FLOCK is right now getting you $100 when you sign up to Underdog Fantasy and play your first 5. And you are getting a free pick on top of that. Sign up before the Thursday night game. It's going to be a free Jalen Hurts pick, higher, lower, half a total yard. After Thursday night game, it'll be a different player. And you'll get free questions in the streams that I'm streaming every single day until Christmas, answering fantasy football questions. Underdog Fantasy is available in almost every single state, and you can find the link in the description as well as the comment section. Now, looking at Bo Nix, it's a really strong matchup going up against the New York Jets. The hesitation I have with Bo is he's just not running the ball nearly as much as what we saw at the beginning of his rookie season. We're down at 20 rushing yards per game so far this year, and he's actually the QB 15 or QB 17 in points per game, but it's a really good matchup against a garbage Jets DST. And then our next tier quarterbacks, Matthew Stafford, leading the NFL in passing, but still, even with him leading the NFL in passing, he's the QB 8, just because, frankly, you have no rushing upside whatsoever. So if the passing volume slides back in any way, obviously, he's going to take a hit. Then we have Trevor Lawrence coming off the monstrous performance, but you can't bank on that type of rushing from Lawrence every week. And I want to say it's a tough matchup, but sportsbooks know better than I do, and they're saying the Jags are actually going to score 24.5 points. Sam Darnold in this same game, I think the Jags are a tough matchup, but the over-under of this game's, again, 47.5. And then with Michael Penix, he's going to have to throw the ball a ton going against Buffalo, but Penix hasn't been great, and he doesn't have rushing upside. And then Jackson Dart, I know, has actually been viable in fantasy, but again, I want to reiterate that I don't have interest in Jackson Dart anymore post Malik Neighbors injury, just because I no longer think you have enough rushing upside. Now, let's move over to tight ends. Now, I completely understand that we just had Jake Ferguson as a sell high candidate, But I'm going to reiterate that Jake Ferguson is a crusher until CeeDee Lamb comes back. This is a phenomenal matchup going up against the Carolina Panthers. Last week, we had Jake Ferguson as our tight end 2, only behind Trey McBride. The projections were a lot higher on Tyler Warren, but I was sitting here going, I can't get away from Ferg. And Jake Ferguson, yet again, is one of my favorite picks on Underdog, higher than 44.5 receiving yards. It's a great matchup against Carolina, and again, with no CeeDee Lamb, I think you're in a really strong spot. Looking at Trey McBride, realistically speaking, I don't necessarily know how much it's going to matter if Kyler Murray is the quarterback or not, because if you have the backup coming in, we typically see backups just kind of lean on their options over the middle of the field, not necessarily trying to push the ball deep, not trying to push the ball down to the boundaries to a Marvin Harrison type player, and maybe going to McBride as the safety blanket. And then with Tyler Warren, he's the last player we can talk about here. He's been a top 12 tight end every single week this season, besides week 3. Now, A tier by himself, we will have Tucker Kraft. With Kraft, you'd hope that he is 100% healthy coming out of the bye week now. And we've seen the crazy high ceiling. We can go back and look at what we had with the big plays in week 2 against Washington when he scored 24.5 points. And again, the Green Bay Packers project to be the highest scoring offense in the league this week. I think Travis Kelce is going to be in an offense that is forced to throw the ball a decent amount. Again, this should be the highest scoring game of the week. Not in love with Travis Kelce for the long term, because eventually you'll get Rashee Rice back in, but Rice isn't in this offense right now. Sam Laporta in this same game. Again, as a general rule of thumb, if you're on the fence about starting a Kansas City Chief, if you're on the fence about starting a Detroit Lion, these are the offenses that I want in my lineup this week, because this is the game that could just be a barn burner. Then with Hunter Henry, the target volume had looked really good early in the year. Over the past 2 weeks, though, since you've had Stephon Diggs really coming out as the wide receiver 1 here in New England, going back-to-back games with over 100 receiving yards, you've actually seen this scale back some for Henry, where the past 2 weeks, he's only had a total of 6 targets. But still, on the season, you actually have him as the tight end 8 in points per game, and the New England Patriots project to score a bunch. Now, Dalton Kincaid is the tight end 3 in points per game. He has done this with a total of 0 games with more than 6 targets. He has done this with a total of 24 targets in 5 games this season. So realistically, this is a little bit of a tough spot where I think we should expect that we get some regression when it comes to the touchdowns for Kincaid. But, I mean, he just played a season-high snap rate at 55%. Then Kyle Pitts will be our next name if we are looking at Kyle Pitts. Every single game this year, he's had at least 5 targets. You had the 70 receiving yards and the receiving touchdown this past week. I'm more interested with Kyle Pitts if Darnell Mooney misses this. Darren Waller is technically the tight end 1 in fantasy points per game. Now, with that being said, he's only had 9 targets over the past 2, so he's been fueled off of touchdowns. But again, you are probably getting the consistent target volume, considering the fact that you have no Tyreek Hill in this offense. Now, Dallas Goedert's the tight end 5 in points per game. This is actually who I plan on starting for my own team this week. But realistically, he is just fueled off of touchdowns. He's currently sitting with 4 touchdowns this season, despite only having a total of 22 targets. So with the yardage not being there, with the touchdown rate being unsustainable, I'd expect that Dallas Goedert slides back dramatically. David Njoku actually looked really good this past week, where he had a season-high 9 targets and a season-high snap rate. Now, the thing that will be an interesting note here is how many 2 tight end sets are the Cleveland Browns running this week? Because what we saw is with no Cedric Tillman, you have a lot more David Njoku and Harold Fannin out there together. Zach Ertz is sliding back. With Ertz, you had 0 fantasy points this past week. Over the past 3, you've had, fewer than 7 points each one. So realistically speaking, I am concerned. But if you have no Terry McLaurin, and at the same time, this projects to be a top 3 offense in the NFL, I completely understand wanting to go through and just jam in Ertz. And then Harold Fannin, our next option. Again, I think David Njoku, Harold Fannin, you're going to have each one of these guys getting weeks going back and forth. Then our last tier of tight ends, you have Juwan Johnson, who started off extremely strong, but now you got Taysom back. You have multitude of tight ends back in New Orleans, and over the past 3 weeks, the volume's fallen dramatically, where he's actually only had 15 targets over the past 3, which obviously is very different than what he had at the beginning of the season. Mason Taylor is trending in the opposite direction, where over the past 3 weeks, Mason Taylor has had a total of 25 targets and just played 84% of the snaps and just had 9 receptions. Now, of course, this offense projects to be very bad. Theo Johnson projects to be in a garbage offense as well. Theo Johnson, crazy touchdown outliers so far. I'd expect that to fall back slightly. And then Mark Andrews looks washed, and this offense looks horrible with no Lamar. Not interested. Now, going over to the DSTs, again, I'm not going to sit here and pretend to be an expert when it comes to ranking defenses. I'm just going to let you know what I do for my own team and why I currently right now have a couple bids out for defenses on the waiver wire. I can't tell you who because I'm going up against the person who's editing this video right now. But the Green Bay Packers are the best defense this week, where this game has the largest spread of any game in the NFL. And they're going up against Joe Flacco behind one of the worst offensive lines. Great defense going up against a garbage O-line. Then we have the Eagles, Pittsburgh Steelers next. Their opponents have an implied team total of 16.5 points going up against the Giants and the Cleveland Browns. Then in tier 3, we're going to be going with the Broncos, the Rams, the Raiders, and the Colts. I'm going to be putting the Colts here despite the Arizona Cardinals still having a relatively decent implied team total. But I think the expectations for me will be that Kyler Murray probably misses this week and the spread on this game probably gets larger. And then the Chargers, New England Patriots will be our next 2 options going up against the Dolphins and Saints. Then we have the Browns, Bucks, Commanders, Bills, Jags, and then lastly, the Titans and the Seattle Seahawks. So for me, I have the Seattle Seahawks as my DST on my roster right now, but hopefully by the time you're watching this, I was able to pick up a different option off the waiver wire. But I really appreciate y'all and really hope that I'm able to help you out with some way in this. And now, of course, I will always say, if you wanted to check out Underdog Fantasy, you can find that link in the description as well as the comment section. Underdog Fantasy is available in almost every single state. And on top of that, you can right now get $100 added to your account when you use promo code FLOCK. It will get added after you play your first $5, and you'll get a free Jalen Hurts pick, higher, lower, half total yard. If you sign up before the Thursday night game, sign up after Thursday night game, be a different player for the free pick. And lastly, you will get free questions that you can ask me in the live streams that I'm live streaming every single night until Christmas. You can find that link to Underdog Fantasy in the description and comment section, available in almost every state. But I really appreciate you and really hope I get to see you out in the live stream later tonight.